And a good Sunday night, everyone. Of course, we're still tracking the tropics out there. A couple of things to note tonight: Fred and Grace out there, and also a new depression that I'll touch on quickly because it's not really worth too much time mentioning. It's not a threat to the Gulf Coast. It's that other one that's out there by Bermuda. This is Tropics After Dark is brought to you and sponsored by Malone Roofing Services. Again, we do appreciate our partners and our sponsors that join us for this season. Thank you again to Malone for joining us. They've been with us for the last couple of years. So moving here, talking about tropical storm Fred out there in the Gulf of Mexico. Good evening, everyone. How you doing, Blake? Good evening, Lori. Darren, good to see you on here. Margaret also. Lisa, Georgette, thank you. Roxanne, good to see you on here. Appreciate you joining tonight. And I appreciate that. So this is Fred. Obviously, in the last couple of days, we've seen, really some different kind of a seesaw with this thing, right? It goes up and down, it goes left and right as far as the track goes. Now we're pretty much locked in. We kind of got in that lock-in mode, like yesterday evening on, somewhere along the Emerald Coast there from Pensacola to Panama City. Looks like that's where we're going to see landfall now, although it still wouldn't surprise me if this thing did go a little bit more east of where the current track is saying, but we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But the bottom line is that wherever this thing comes in, you can see here on the satellite that a lot of this stuff is going to be to the east of where the center is. That's kind of what I've been saying. Don't, you focus on the center to see where it's going to come in, but if you're not in the center and you're especially east of it, pay attention here, because just because you're not close to the center doesn't mean that you're not going to see some impacts from this system. So Fred's looking a little better tonight, right, than it did yesterday. Obviously, we do have a big bubble up of convection here on the satellite. This evening, the center is actually, if you look at where the National Hurricane Center has it plotted here, it's kind of due south or maybe southwest of where Panama City is. So they actually have the center. The center is actually somewhere in here, or somewhere close to here. So what my point is that we do have a lot of the convection here, but it's to the east of where the center is, and so that's something to keep in mind as this thing does move to the north. We could see a lot of action to where the east is, but this gives us kind of a better look at where the National Hurricane Center's current cone is. And again, this is as of 10 p.m. tonight. It has increased in intensity a bit. The pressure is down to 999 millibars, and the winds are up to 50 miles per hour currently, with gusts up to about 65. And they do forecast to actually strengthen a bit as it moves in close to the coast. They forecast this to get up to 60 miles per hour. Could it get higher? It certainly could. I'm not saying it will, but the potential is there. It does have enough time over water that it could get a little bit stronger than 60. The hope is that it doesn't. Hope is it doesn't get up to 60 at all, right? Let's keep it at 50 and not intensify. But looking at the satellite, it does appear that it doesn't look as ragged as it did yesterday. It does have maybe a slight resemblance of a tropical storm, definitely more than yesterday. But my point is that it is in a position with the warm water ahead of it that it could intensify, obviously. Not expecting rapid intensification, but certainly could see gradual intensification as it makes its way to the shore. So looking at timing here and kind of the exact landfall spot, or don't take this as gospel, because this is going to obviously shift a little bit back and forth, but this is where their center line is located, between Grayton Beach and Rosemary Beach here. So it would be west of Panama City. So folks in Panama City area, and even over here toward like Port St. Joe, Apalachicola, remember all that mess is going to be on the eastern side of this. Now, folks, if this does come in where this is indicating, folks on the western side here, Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, Fort Walton, Destin, you'll still feel some things. Obviously, you'll feel there's a tropical storm around, but on the western side of this thing, it's not going to be as bad. I'm telling you, the rainfall and of course the potential for some storm surge, not going to be as bad on the left side. Remember, around the tropical system, you have the flow like this. So on this side, the water is actually going to be pushing offshore, and on this side, the water is going to be pushing onshore. So that's where the storm surge numbers are going to be a little bit higher, and this indicates that. You can see on the western side of where it comes in, 1 to 3 feet, right? Not a big deal, but on the right side of it, we're looking at 3 to 5 foot water rise and 2 to 4 feet over there as well. So the numbers are obviously higher for storm surge on the eastern side of this thing. That's just the typical case, obviously, every time with tropical systems when you have onshore flow versus offshore flow. So keep that in mind. And this kind of shows you a little bit of the radar and what it could look like moving forward. And by the way, I wanted to show you that currently what we're looking at as far as the where is it at? There it is. So we do have some, these are connected sort of to Fred down there. You can see that flow around it, the counterclockwise flow from right to left there, and some storms actually just offshore, right? Apalachicola, Port St. Joe getting some storms right now, and just offshore you do see some rainfall. So these bands are going to continue to push up toward the north as we go into tonight and then finally into tomorrow as well. But looking at the potential radar and what we could see, and this is what I'm going to look at and what could become concerning moving forward. If you look, and this is around Mobile here, this is Pensacola area, just to kind of get a grasp of where the coastline is. I know it's hard to see, so I kind of draw that on there right there. But you see some of these heavier bands starting to move in, and this is by like 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, with the center located somewhere around here. Now, again, this is the H-Wharf model, or so it might not be exact as far as where it will come on shore, but I do want to give you, just stress a point as when this thing does move to the north, notice these heavier rain bands as they start to move in, right? They're to the east and the north of the system. On the west side here, Mobile, Pensacola area, you're looking good, right? Not much happening over there as far as rainfall goes. Yeah, you might get a shower or two, a little bit of gusty wind every now and then, maybe a heavy downpour around the rotation, but the bulk of the action is going to be north and east of where this thing makes landfall, so keep that in mind. And then the center pushes in tomorrow. It looks like a late evening maybe, or evening. Timing's a little off, but it looks like evening. What do they have it at now? They have this point right here at what is this, 7 p.m. tomorrow. So keep in mind, it's tomorrow evening, it looks like. But you see the point here, and this is what I was talking about yesterday, and you get this with tropical systems sometimes. You see these long bands that set up around the eastern side of these tropical systems. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly where this thing's going to set up, but with these storms, a lot of times we have these long bands that set up, and they're impossible to predict right now as far as where they'll set up. But we saw it with Claudette earlier this season in Slidell and Gulfport, or some other areas along the Mississippi Gulf Coast as well, where we got these long bands that set up, and they just drop way too much rainfall in small amount of time, and they can cause flash flooding around some neighborhoods, and count that with the storm surge that might be coming up. Flash flooding, storm surge issues. We could see some issues from this, all right? And it's not going to be the strongest storm we've ever had around this area. Obviously, we're seasoned veterans around this area dealing with this. But even with a weak tropical storm like this, or even like a mid-grade tropical storm, right? This is not a weak tropical storm. It could be 60 miles per hour. That's getting up there. We can still have flash flooding problems is kind of what I'm trying to stress here. And what we'll look for tomorrow moving in on the radar live is these longer bands that can set up. And what you get is a storm that moves to the north, but the bands move north with it, but they're not moving east or west. They're moving over the same areas over and over again. And that causes the flash flooding issues. And so with these bands, we can see that happening potentially. As far as the H-Wharf and simulating what the infrared might look like tomorrow, so this is kind of what we're looking at now, right there. It looks pretty good as far as the initialization. We move this forward, and you can see maybe some deepening into tomorrow morning, and right when it gets on the coast, maybe it intensifies a little bit more. That's what the National Hurricane Center thinks. Back up to about 60, maybe 65 or 70. I don't know. Could it get a little more? It could. We'll have to just wait and see. But you see how it kind of expands a little bit, and then once it makes landfall, it, of course, falls apart. We could see some flooding up there as it moves to the north as well. It's always an issue with these tropical systems after they make landfall, too. So, yeah, so that's something to keep an eye on. This is a, where is that graphic at here? Let's see. This one here. So this is kind of talking about some, I know some folks usually ask about certain impacts for certain areas, and this kind of tells you a little bit of what to expect around the area. And this is talking about the wind threat, right? So all these orange areas, we can kind of zoom in a little bit here. So remember where the center is going to be coming in. Again, it might not be exact, but the center is going to be coming somewhere, like around here maybe, close to there. I don't know. Well, you know what? Actually, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to guess. I can put it in a cone. Hold on a sec. What did I just do? All right, so there's the cone. And notice that the impact areas here are, going to be to the east of, where that's going to be. Let me reload this real quick. So we just had give me 1 second here. All right, let me zoom back in here and show you what's going on in this map. I don't know what happened just now. So the areas in orange, as far as wind threats, this is the area that's most potential to see 58 to 73 mile per hour winds, right? That would be the strong tropical storm just below hurricane status. That's the area in orange, right? Here along the Florida Panhandle. And that would be, from Santa Rosa over to Laguna, Panama City, over to the east a bit, Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe. All these areas would be in that orange. These would be the most likely areas if you're going to see them. 58 to 73 mile per hour winds, right? And then the areas in orange, potential for 39 to 57 mile per hour winds. And that's a lot of folks, right? That's anywhere from Pensacola, even through like Tallahassee there to the east. That's 37 to 39 to 57 mile per hour wind potential. Not saying you're going to get that. If you're going to see it, though, these are the areas that would be most likely to see it. I'll touch on Grace in just a second, okay? Just give me a few minutes to talk about Fred here. Fred's going to make landfall soon, tomorrow. Grace is way out there, not making landfall probably anywhere along the Gulf Coast. But anyway, that's another story. Hold on. All right, so that's the potential for winds. How about storm surge threats? So these areas here in orange would be the most likely area to see the storm surge. That's where the 3 to 5 feet is indicated there in the map I just showed you. In the other areas, the yellows, you could see 1 to 3, maybe 2 to 4 foot water rise along the coast there. So that would be the areas in yellow. How about the flooding rain threat? Now, this is this is looking at the potential, and this goes along, by the way, with this map right here. Now, what I was just talking about, where we see those bands set up and you can't really predict them right now, that area in red right there, if you live in that area there and you're in that red area, that's where, if we're gonna see flash flooding from this thing, that's the most likely area that it's gonna occur. And the areas in yellow moving up as the storm moves in that direction. So that red area is going to be the most likely spot that we could see some flash flooding, and that's this area right here, and that's the potential for major flooding rain, right? And the words sound scary, major flooding rain, but just say that there's a moderate chance to see some flooding rains in this area. And again, that would be, this is in Panama City Beach area, Port St. Joe, and that's, looking at, let's see, it's Miramar, Santa Rosa Beach, and then the areas in orange here, that would be Navarre, Fort Walton, Destin. These are potential for moderate flooding rains. And then you get to the point over here in the yellow, and this is the potential for localized flooding rain. Not as much of a chance, especially if you're going to be on the western side, and that would be folks in Pensacola area. So the red area is the most likely chance that you would see, some flash flooding from this thing. How about tornado threats? And a lot of folks ask about that. And with any tropical landfalling system, yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be a wide area because you're going to have these bands moving in, and any one of these isolated bands, you can have these little tornadoes spawn up. And so don't be shocked going into tomorrow if this area in yellow, probably going to have a tornado watch issued. They usually do that for all these storms that make landfall. So this is going to be the area where we could see the potential for some tornadoes from this thing. And so it's a wide area. That's just what they do. I would say on the left side, though, if you're on the west side of the cone, you're going to there's really a low chance because you're not going to have those bands flowing in. So those are kind of the risk with the storm moving forward. And there's a look at the storm surge again 3 to 5 east of where the center is. Rain totals, again, it's hard to predict this kind of thing, but they try. This orange area, this is kind of what we just looked at, right? The most likely chance to see flash flooding. This is the 6 to 10 inch range. Could we have locally higher? Maybe if those bands set up that are just impossible to predict right now. If those bands do set up around, then we could have locally higher amounts than 6 to 10 inches. So something to watch for there. This is a look again at Fred if you're joining late. And again, big blob of convection here. All this obviously is this thing kind of hooks in a little bit like this. All of this is going to be moving to the north here, so that's why there's that risk of seeing a lot of rainfall from this. So just recapping again, if you joined in late, this is the landfall location prediction that they're giving right now. 60 miles per hour at landfall is what they're predicting, the National Hurricane Center, and gust up to about 70. So it does have the potential to strengthen as we go into the overnight hours and then into tomorrow before it makes landfall. They're thinking 7 p.m. approximately, so tomorrow evening. Could it be quicker? Yes. Could it be slower? Yes. But, obviously give or take a couple of hours with this, but we still look like 60 miles per hour from this, with gusts a little bit higher. So rainfall is going to be a big concern, especially east of the center, and then storm surge as well is going to be, a little bit of a concern there. So that's the latest on Fred out there in the Gulf of Mexico. Quickly want to touch on Grace here, and I've been talking about Grace for the last couple of nights, and gave you that scenario last night about the ridging over the Gulf of Mexico usually is a pretty good sign for the Gulf when those big domes of high pressure set up. And I touched on it quickly last night. I posted to the page today that's what I was seeing on the modeling is a big ridge over the Gulf. And when that happens, you just don't get storms that can come through at that point. And usually they're just sent straight to the west. And so I was a little surprised to see a lot of models coming into the Gulf. But now the models have responded a bit. And I think, at least I'm hoping for the Gulf Coast's sake, obviously folks in Mexico will get this, but for the Gulf Coast's sake, that ridge of high pressure over the Gulf usually is a very favorable pattern. Now, another thing that's happened, remember the other night we were talking about this storm. Here's Hispaniola, this is Puerto Rico right here. This storm is actually south of these islands, and remember the other night the National Hurricane Center had them going right over the islands just like Fred did, but this is south of the islands right now. So the trajectory it's coming in is a bit more south, so when it moves to the west, it's going to be easier to just follow the path of that ridge. So with that said, this is a look at the current tracks for Grace, right? And look, keep in mind, by the way, Grace is only a depression right now. It's not a strong storm out there currently. It's only a tropical depression. It's not doing very well out there. So, so it looks like it actually could go south of the islands, which wouldn't have been good news the other night that we were seeing for the Gulf Coast's sake, because it looked like the islands could rip it apart. Now it looks like it might avoid the actual islands and kind of sneak through here. The good news for the Gulf is that this ridge of high pressure is going to be here, and it looks like it could just send this storm straight to the west. So protect a lot of folks along the Gulf Coast there. That was the story that I saw today when I was looking at the modeling, and I was kind of glad to see after I posted that the model started to respond to that story, or else people might have called me out a little bit. I get called out anyway, by the way, on a lot of the posts that I put, and I read through some of the comments sometimes. I'm like, geez, why do people make comments like this? I was like, who did something to you? It's like, I'm just posting an idea. People are like, oh, this has changed 7 times today. Not really. No, not really. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, the comments. I try to respond to a few of them, and some of them I just shake my head at. But anyway, this is the, this is, somebody just mentioned Haiti. You're not kidding. Haiti got Fred. Haiti got the earthquake, and the last thing Haiti needs right now, unfortunately, it looks like Grace is going to pass by there. I was looking at that too, Haiti on the western side here. As this thing swings by, they could get some rainfall. Unfortunately, I was seeing that's the last thing they need right now in that recovery from the earthquake. So here we go. So this is a look here at Grace, and right now, for now, this is the latest track here, and for the Gulf Coast, and this track is pretty typical. A lot of times you either see a hook to the north, or if you don't get that, a lot of times, you do get the path in this direction. Now what I would say is like I always say, is that this is early in the game still, especially folks along the Gulf Coast of Texas. And if we do have some folks watching from Mexico too, keep an eye on this. But I don't know if there's any folks watching. But I would say, if we're on the U.S. Gulf Coast, folks in this area around Texas, although it's not a likely scenario right now, if that ridge would back off a little bit, and you'd have something like the periphery of the ridge located like right here, then you might get some kind of swing back to the northwest at the end of this. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying it's too far in advance right now to just say that that's not a possibility. Something to watch for. Not saying that is the prediction, but yeah. But the good news is that it looks like they have, you see these Ds, this is the depression all the way, so could get back into a storm as it gets to the Gulf of Mexico. But as long as that ridge of high pressure is here, I think the majority of us here in the northern Gulf Coast over here toward Florida are looking good right now, and that the most likely scenario does take this to the west. So looks like it'll hold in place for a while. The only thing I would say is that at the end of the track, and this is going in, look, I see nothing right now, by the way, and I just want to make that clear. I don't see anything right now that tells me that would happen. It looks like the most likely scenario is across the Yucatan Peninsula and straight into Mexico here. That is a common track, and that happens a lot. But because that is still 120 hours out, this, we have to watch for, these types of models at the end here, some sort of little hook at the end. So something to watch for, but I mean, don't be concerned if you're in Texas right now. That's something that's, something that you just have to watch for and moving forward. But I think the most likely scenario is the fact that ridge should be in place. And I can kind of show you this right here. Where is it at? Let's switch this over to the upper level chart and see what we got here. So as we move forward, there goes Fred up there. Now notice here what happens, right? The deep reds, this is the high pressure, right? I mean, you can see that. I don't need me to tell you that. That is the ridge right there. And I'll kind of show you playing this out as far as the modeling goes. This is on Wednesday. This is Grace right here, right? So obviously Grace can't come to the north at this point, right? These ridges act as like a shield, basically. So Grace is here, and Grace has to go west at this point. And then, so here goes that ridge. Now notice at the end of it here, it does start to weaken a bit, right? So this is now into Friday. Now at this point, if this happens, Grace has gone over the Yucatan. At this point, it's probably disrupted, obviously. That landmass is disrupted. Now the ridge is still kind of in place here over the Gulf. It's weaker, but at this point, it's kind of too late, and Grace is gone. Grace has gone west and is not coming back. So there is going to be some timing there where the ridge does get a little bit weaker, but, at that point, it might be too late for Grace to make any kind of movement. So, something to watch for there, obviously, moving into next week. It's too early to say this is definitely not a threat to the Gulf. I think if it is going to be a threat to the Gulf, it would be for possibly very south portion of Texas. But even that right now might be a long shot. And this is a look at the European model showing the same thing. There's that ridge in place by Wednesday night into Thursday. It starts to dissipate, but Grace is already sent to the west. So both models indicating that that's the case. It's not only those two models. These are the model ensembles for Grace this evening. And they're saying the same thing, right? Straight to the west across the Yucatan with a couple hooking to the north. But we'll have to see what the trends do. But right now it looks like ridging's going to be in place. It's going to be hot along the Gulf Coast. But I think we'll trade the heat to protect us from these tropical systems, from at least Grace, potentially coming in. So it looks good currently for the Gulf Coast, for Grace. And in fact, if these trends continue for this, for Grace in the modeling, then you might actually see these be pegged a little bit more to the south heading into tomorrow. So something to watch for there as well moving in. But that's Grace. That's still a little ways out. The other, by the way, I told you I'd touch on this. I don't really want to, but this is Tropical Depression number 8. So folks in Bermuda, if there are some folks from Bermuda watching tonight, I apologize. This is Tropical Depression 8, and it's making a curve, and it's going to go here, and it's going to go back to the north, and it's not a threat to the Gulf Coast. So I'm confident to say that. Anyway, that's Fred. There's Fred showing more convection around the center and mainly east of the center, really. I'm still not seeing any wrapping around the actual center. A lot of the action is to the east, and so that's why all these areas here need to watch out for the potential for some flash flooding as we go into tomorrow and tomorrow night as well. So that's the latest on Fred. This is a look at the the kind of the cone there from the National Hurricane Center. Let me see if we have any questions here. How you doing, Jerry? Thanks for joining in. Cindy, thank you. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, City, it happens with these storms. Early on. Early models for any tropical system, they don't mean much. I mean, we love to look at the early models, and even kind of right now with Grace, although I am very confident in the current trajectory of Grace, because ridging over the Gulf Coast is kind of an easy scenario to kind of forecast. If that ridging is going to be in place, then the storm is going to go west, right? It's not going to come through there. Those protective shield type ridges, they are strong usually, and they usually force things to the west. So it's one of those kind of forecasts that have a lot more confidence in than if we're dealing with like a front dipping down and timing issues, and so it's a little bit more confidence in that type of thing. So we'll watch it though. It's worth watching though as it continues to move to the west, because there's still a little bit of a long range element to the end of the cone there that could have some impacts if it does decide to maybe hook a little bit to the north toward the south part of Texas. So there is some stuff to still fine tune moving in. No problem, Ben. Appreciate it. Sarah, how you doing this evening? Thanks for joining. Yeah, Georgette. A lot of folks thankful for Grace's trajectory. That is a little bit different than what we were looking at earlier. Hopefully Grace doesn't intensify much at all. Hopefully it just stays a tropical storm no matter where it goes. Yeah, Tanya, they do create really pretty looking sunrise and sunsets when there's something tropical in there. You get different cloud heights, different cloud looks to it. It's really cool. Houston looks okay right now. I mean, the ridge moving out sooner. I mean, I don't know. There's, it doesn't look like it's gonna move out quickly enough to affect the northern Gulf Coast. Sometimes there are obviously margins of error for these models, and that's why I'm saying for the end of the track, especially to watch out at at the end. There might be some fine tuning to that forecast coming in, but we're still early in the game right now with Grace for any impacts on the Gulf Coast. But right now, it looks like the likely scenario is going to be kind of just a straight path to the west there. So gotta watch it though a little bit. I don't know. Texas may not get rain bands from it if it stays far enough to the south. You know what it's going to be looking like. I mean, as it goes over the Yucatan Peninsula, it might just get torn apart, just be a little tropical wave moving to the west. So early to even talk about it. Charles, what's Apalachicola looking like? That's a good question. I talked a little bit about Apalachicola earlier. Obviously, look, Apalachicola is not in the cone technically, but what I was stressing earlier, Charles, and folks in this area, is don't pay too much attention to the cone, especially with a storm like this, because the center is somewhere over here to the west, but Apalachicola is somewhere around there, right? And then look at all this stuff here, right? So a lot of the action is going to be east of where the center is going to be coming in, and especially with storms that are not very well formed like this, you have that issue, and this kind of illustrates that right here. Apalachicola is, where are we here? Right in there, right? So Apalachicola would be in that area that has the potential or the biggest chance, I would say, for flash flooding with this. So although you're not even in the cone, this is why the cone can be deceiving sometimes for a lot of these storms. You're not in the cone, but the greatest risk for the storm may be the flash flooding potential, and you're in it. You're in that red to see the most, the biggest chance for it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying you're going to flood. I'm saying that if we see flooding from this, it's probably going to happen in that area somewhere in red. And what we watch for is these bands. These bands are going to be moving in tomorrow. We'll have to just watch those closely on radar. In addition to that, we do have the potential to see some wind with this. And these orange areas, I don't think Apalachicola is in this area. It's close. These areas in orange, in case y'all join later, are the biggest potential to see winds from 58 to 73 miles per hour if you're in the orange area. The yellow, 39 to 57 mile per hour winds are possible here. So, yeah, the biggest threat for this looks like it's going to be flooding, rains potentially, and of course we have that storm surge issue in some areas, and around that Big Bend, 3 to 5 feet possible. If you're on the west side of this though, you're gonna be just fine. You might get some rain wrapping around a little bit, but we're not gonna be looking at flooding on the west side. The winds probably won't even be that bad on the west side. Yeah, you'll feel a little breezy. It'll probably be really nice actually on the west side. It's still have a north wind, so it probably will be actually pretty nice over there. But and that's kind of the same thing. So Destin area. Who's asking that, Eddie? As you look at where the storm is forecast to come in, that's going to put Destin. Now, look, there is some margin for error here, right? Here's Destin. there is still some margin for error in play. There's Destin right here, the center line somewhere around here. Could the center come in over here? It absolutely could. And it could also come in more to the east. And if I were to pick right now, the more likely chance it was going to shift west or east, I would actually say it would. If it's going to do anything, it might go more east than where this track is indicating right now. It's just my gut. It's just something I'm kind of seeing on satellite. I would trend, if we're going to see a shift, it would be more to the east. That's just me, though. With that said, we'll go with the National Hurricane Center right now, and they have the center here. That would put Destin on the drier side. Destin in here somewhere. So we wouldn't be looking at the flash flooding potential in there most likely, and we might have some winds in there. But Destin, I think, is going to be okay, especially if it comes in this area. I think we're all going to be okay, by the way. Some of us are going to see more impacts than others, though. Don't. There are some things you probably shouldn't do as the storm's coming in. Don't go in the water. Don't stand by the water. Don't be, really just don't do anything silly. You'll be okay, I think. Don't. Yeah. Y'all know by now how to handle these storms, I'm sure, in these areas, and this won't be the worst that you've seen. But we're going to see a little bit of impact from this, especially in some areas east of the center with the rainfall and the and some of the good night, Roxanne, and some of the winds there. So this is a look at the cone from the National Hurricane Center. Their forecast is 7 p.m. tomorrow night, 60 miles per hour. It could be a little bit more, right? Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less. We'll have to just see what happens. But even if it's 60 gusts up to 70, you'll feel that, especially east of the center. You'll certainly feel those winds if you do get those 60 and 70 mile per hour winds. That's what we got here in Kenner last year when we were for Zeta. I think they clocked like 72 or 7. It felt like, it was intense out there. And I'm like, those had to be 90 or 100. And they said that the only thing they clocked at the airport, which it could have been higher where we were, but the airport clocked like 70 or so. So if you get 70 mile per hour winds, you will feel that. And that could cause some, outages. I don't know if I don't think it's gonna be widespread, but certainly that could cause some power outages across the area. So something to keep in mind there, something to watch as we go into tomorrow. This is a look, by the way, at the current radar, and we do have a couple of storms there. How you doing, Pete? Good to see you on here. We do have a couple of storms that are close to the Panhandle right now. A couple are coming through Apalachicola or just north of there, Port St. Joe. A lot of the bulk of the stuff is still south. You can see it down there, and that's all going to be moving to the north going into tomorrow. So a lot of rain that still has to come in, and we'll watch that going into the overnight hours and mainly tomorrow. Tomorrow evening looks like when it's going to make landfall. So everybody stay safe out there. That's the latest on Tropical Storm Fred. We're watching Grace out there. We'll track Fred, and then we'll worry about Grace after that. But Grace, for now, looks like decent news for the Gulf Coast. So everybody stay safe out there. Watch the storms moves in tomorrow. Maybe bring in, secure some objects outside, the house that you don't want to blow away potentially. Even 60 or 70 miles per hour can do a little bit of that. But yeah, y'all been through this before, I'm sure. A lot of y'all around this area, y'all know what to kind of expect. Y'all seem worse. So there's another tropical storm to move through tomorrow. So thank you guys for joining tonight. Appreciate y'all for Tropics After Dark. Appreciate our sponsor, Malone Roofing Services. Stay with the page. I'll continue to keep y'all updated. Share this video if you'd like, and stay with the page throughout this season. Hopefully it's not going to be too active, but from now until probably mid to late October, we're probably going to have a couple more things to track, unfortunately. So thank you guys